Hi, and welcome to the official National Cathedrals Conference podcast for 2022. My name is Kate.
My name's Jordan.
And we are two Northumbria history university students, and we're on a placement with the communication teams for the conference. And this is a place for us to discuss what's happening at the conference, and to break that down for people at home, but also to inject our opinions as two 20-year-olds, or 21, Jordan being 20, young people, and how this affects us and our opinions on it. But I hear you say, what is the National Cathedrals Conference? Whoa.
Well, so the National Cathedral Conference, this is only the second ever National Cathedral Conference. So this is quite an initial event. There isn't much background behind what's going on here, which makes it even more special that we're doing this, I feel like, because, you know, when they look back on this 10 years down the line, they're going to go, oh, this was the second one. So that there's something they can look back on, not just the pictures and the blog posts from the conference. There's actual young people's thoughts. So this serves as an opportunity for key figures in both the Church of England cathedrals as well as ecumenical partners, not sure I said that word right, to gather at Newcastle Cathedral to draw breath after recent difficult times, things like COVID, to exchange wisdom on the challenges and opportunities for the future direction of the church and society as a whole.
Or in more simple terms, it's to discuss challenges society currently faces and will continue to face, and how the church will adapt and respond to them. The conference tagline for this year is Different Country, Different Church. And this goes hand in hand with the themes of the conference, which are climate justice, racial justice, and social justice. And as Jordan has so eloquently said, this podcast will aim to discuss these topics with using the session discussions taking place over the next 4 days to springboard and deep dive into the themes, but also to incorporate our own personal thoughts and opinions as two young people in new world, essentially. And we look forward to discussing this further in all the episodes we release. But today it is the first day and it is our first podcast. So it's been a very long day. Wouldn't you agree, Jordan?
Yeah. For me, I've been trying to get out of bed since 6 this morning. Got out of bed officially at 7. Was at the cathedral for about 8:10 in the morning. And then we left at about 5 and we've been here ever since.
Yeah, we're currently in our student union recording this podcast episode, and I would agree. I've been up from around 7, tried to get in at 8, my bus didn't come, so I got in for about 9. But luckily, I didn't get in any trouble because the bus really didn't come. I would say, though, overall, even though it's been a long day, and I think it's going to be a whole long week, today ran really smoothly, and we had so many interesting discussions and had so many inspirational speakers. In particular, James Martin and Sir John Major had some fascinating things to say in their topics today.
Yeah, they were pretty fascinating. John Major basically just laid out what the conference was about, stories from his childhood, about him growing up as a Christian, and how he views the Christian church as being more important than ever, but that, you know, the church is quite fractured in how does it deal with these new issues of climate change, racial justice, social justice, and how does it move forward without feeling the need to separate itself from politics. And as he said, it should remain in politics, but not just partisan party politics, which, you know, dominates the mainstream politics, instead focusing on, you know, the individual politics, the everyman sort of politics. That was his main focus. So James Martin basically talked about working with those that had been excluded from life. And so he focused on 3 main stories from the Bible. You know, so you had the woman from Sumeria, is it? Is it Sumeria?
I think so, yeah. Please, honestly, correct us if we're wrong. We are not completely versed in the Bible, so if we get anything wrong, just correct us. We're fine with it, honestly.
So the woman from Sumeria that Jesus helps when everyone is telling him basically to leave her, and that she'd been isolated from everyone because she had basically had 4 husbands before her. Oh no, sorry. She had 5 husbands and was now living with a man who wasn't her current husband. So basically her history with men had been brought into question and she had been ostracized from the entire community. Then there was the story of the Roman centurion who Jesus chose to help, but because he was a pagan and didn't follow Christ, his followers looked down on the Roman centurion, and it was, why are you helping that man? And then there was the man from Jericho who was a tax collector, and because he was a tax collector, he was hated by his entire community and was ostracized just like the other two. And Jesus again helped him. That was continuously the message that James Martin put forward, of helping those that should have been excluded from society. And the main theme that James Martin brought up is, do you want to follow the crowd, follow the trend, and just follow what everyone else is doing, or do you want to do the right thing, the good thing, which is sometimes standing alone and helping that person that doesn't have anyone else?
I think they are great summaries of what viewers and listeners might have missed or haven't missed and have been lucky enough to attend the conference. A good recap of what's happened today. The main thing we're going to focus on today, though, is Jeff Miller and the Newcastle team and their speech and sort of segment, A Cathedral Learning to Speak Geordie, Transforming in Context. And as Jordan has so wonderfully summarised the last two, I think he would be great to summarise what Jeff was saying before we get into the main body of what Jeff was saying and our different opinions and what we took from what was the overwhelming message of what Jeff was saying, do you believe, Jordan?
Yeah, so I would say the overall message that he was trying to portray was that, the culture and the dialect of Newcastle is constantly changing. And, the job of Newcastle Cathedral is not to remain stagnant and stand poised against the change that is happening around it. It is instead to change with the city and to grow with it and evolve and look at new ways that it can help people. It can't remain stuck in the past, and that it has to instead learn from the past experiences that the church has felt, that different communities in Newcastle have experienced, and learn from that and grow and experience new things. So, frequently the LGBT community was brought up, like James Martin went into, and how there's now groups for those types of people. So, Jeff made the point in his speech that there's been a significant difference between the cathedral and the people of Newcastle that started around 20 years ago, but that started more specifically around 10 years ago. And so, in general, I feel like he was saying it started somewhere, but then over the more recent 10 years, that divide has just grown and grown and grown and got bigger and bigger. And the cathedral is doing its best. And I don't want to say it's doing its best now. It's been doing its best for a while to bridge the gap between different groups of people. So, you have the LGBT community. When I talked to him, he mentioned a refugee, I believe it was from Iraq, that had just happened upon the cathedral and said he found a home there. You have sex workers, different types of groups that have came in and have found homes and a safe space to just come and feel welcome where they might not have had that. And so as I'm speaking now, I hope you're starting to see the connection both with John Major's speech and James Martin's speech.
Yeah, no, I hope the listeners are really starting to just grasp how great of a really setting it was, setting the tone for the conference. One of the main significant things is, why Newcastle? Why? People could ask this so easily. Why are we going to Newcastle as a cathedral conference? It's very well known that Newcastle's cathedral is the most northernly Anglican church. So why centre it here? And I think there's so many great reasons it should be centred. But I know, Jordan, you, as a fellow Geordie, unless the viewers can't tell, I am not from Newcastle, but Jordan definitely is from Newcastle. So I think it's invaluable to get your response to this of why do you think it's so important that this great event is being held in Newcastle over anywhere else in the whole of England?
So, the entire conference is about change and how does the church move with change. And so I think it was personally held in Newcastle because of these characteristics that are so common among Geordies. So things such as resilience, courage, stubbornness, as well as partying, which
I
is...
don't know if you know about stubbornness. What do you mean by stubbornness? Because that could turn a few Jolix the wrong way. What do you mean by stubbornness?
Stubbornness is in, regardless of what happens, of just... And you've beat me to my point here.
Sorry.
Of just... a just get on with it mentality, that stubbornness of not giving up, of just working hard and doing the best that you can, and regardless of what happens, just looking for the good in life, looking for the laughter, the happiness, the good in people, everything like that. And so I think the cathedral was chosen as the place because as you move with change, you don't want to focus on the negative things. Your encounter with change, well, let's just give up. It's about, okay, I've been encountered with change. How do I learn from that change that someone else is going through? How do I allow them to teach me? And I grow from that and I become a better person whilst, and this is my next point, is whilst still remaining who I am and still from the context of the city and from the context of the cathedral, still maintaining what we are. So maintaining that heritage that Newcastle and the cathedral have got of, for the cathedral, it's of Christ, of God, still maintaining those worship values. From the city perspective, it's the pit mines, the factories, it's the Baltic, it's the Sage, it's the Lang Art Gallery.
You can even say the football club at this point, let's be honest.
All those different things. The famous bridges, all these different things that have formed part of the Newcastle heritage. Also, a big part relating to the cathedral on that point would be that this is the most northerly cathedral. Like, it was about community, it was about resilience, it was about nature, it was about courage, it was about, like I say, that just get on with it mentality of, we might have a less than great situation that we're in, but how do we ultimately make the best of it? And, if we're going to relate it back to the conference, all of this that we're about is just how do we deal with change, and not deal with change in a negative way. How do we learn from that change? How do we grow from it? And how do we accept the challenge that might give us? Does that make sense?
No, I completely get it. And I think this idea of community you've brought up is so key to Jeff's speech. If you were lucky enough to listen to Jeff and the team speak, they're all such eloquent but also they don't grand up the speech. They talk quite simply in the nicest way possible. They try and make talking to people accessible, that you're not going to remove people. And he talks about community more than anything else, whether that's directly or reference. You can highlight once or twice the amount of times Jeff mentions about God, because it seems that community is what is at the centre of this church. And that is such a key part of, I believe, how the church will move forward, especially in a time where people are becoming less religious and less involved in church communities. Much discussion was talked about how fewer people are attending church and how to fill it. And the way Jeff and the Newcastle Cathedral run in general is all centering about community and this idea of radical welcome and welcoming anyone and everyone to the church, and making sure that one of the reverends said something so welcome is they always look to see who's not there. And that's really stuck with me personally, because it's like, well, we're not looking who is here and trying to sort of make ourselves sound so like we include everyone. They purposely go, no, this person isn't here.
How do we get them in here?
How do we get them in there? How do we show that we want them here and that everyone's welcome? And that's such a brilliant thing to be promoting and making sure that is at the centre of it.
Yeah, so with that idea of community, one thing that I would say is there's a lot of criticism, you would say, that focuses on, well, the church has this, the church has that. Why does it not use those things to help people? one thing that I would say about the church is that they made the specific point, I think it was Jeff that made the specific point, that they've chosen to go out of their way to use materials from the area to build certain things. So the benches, I believe it was, were built from material from around here. The floor panels were built from materials around here. And on top of that, when it comes to how do we use this space to help people, it wasn't just who's here, you know, singing hymns and things like that or attending church. It was also them welcoming the homeless in during COVID, for which they, you know, built new boilers and then also got under the floor heating to make it much warmer at night. Because I don't know if you weren't there at the cathedral, you might not know this, that place wasn't exactly warm. So for someone that's been on the streets for a long time, they're going to need that heating during the night to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Especially, they showed some of the pictures. They were on sleeping blankets on the floor, so that extra warmth is going to help them greatly. Yeah.
I think when the first time we ever met our team to discuss what was happening in the cathedral, they made this really great point of they wanted to get rid of the pews so that they could turn the church into anything, and that the church can be anything for the community. They're having isn't it comedy in the church, something like that? I don't know if that's the official name, but it's stuff like that. And Catherine, who is the marketing and communication manager, really wants to do a rave in the nave, as she was once talking about. And it's this idea of churches trying to adapt and to find out who this sort of is, a more modern identity, and how they can help people in their community. And it's just Newcastle is such a great place and such a beacon of this is sort of the way the Anglican Church is going to present themselves now. And even just the people there, you could sense the kind of want to sort of achieve and kind of emulate, but mirror in their own way what Newcastle is. Jeff made a really good point of they're learning to speak Geordie because that's their dialect, but every church...
But it's also the dialect of God, he said.
Yes, but it's how the church is learning how to... Newcastle is learning how to speak Geordie, but other churches should also learn how to speak their own like local dialect, instead of like actually mirroring exactly what Newcastle done. It's reflect back onto your community and see what you can do for it. And I think that's such a beautiful message, and it's such a great way to open the conference. I just think it was a brilliant way of really trying to understand and deep rooting in what the conference is trying to achieve, and why Newcastle is probably maybe one of the perfect places to hold this conference.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of great ideas. Another one that I've just remembered is, you know, if you've ever been to any church, in pretty much all of them, or at least that traditional classical image, is the pews set up in straight lines facing the front, where the altar is, the priest performs his sermon, and, you know, then everyone gets up, sings hymns, things like that. This church showed us image that they don't do that. Instead, what they have is the pews in circles to face everyone. Instead, they have chairs that form rows that face each other, with the priest in basically the middle, and then it encourages people to face each other. But it's not a thing of you have to be at the front. They have chairs behind each other. So if you want to be at the back, because that's where you're most comfortable, you can be at the back. If you want to show your face and you want to be at the front, that's fine. They're more than welcoming of everything. And this simple thing just encourages more community. So it's, you know, bigger things in refurbishing the church, but it's also smaller things of just, here's us just trying to foster a community in just simple ways.
And you've had a private meeting with Jeff. I know, lucky Jordan, if we could all have a private meeting with Jeff. And he told you some of the amazing things the church is doing to help some of the issues of social injustice, racial injustice, and climate injustice. Do you have like a favourite story that he told you that deal with some of how practically Newcastle is dealing with some of the issues that the conference is going to discuss?
So one of the stories that he told me, and there were a couple similar stories from Jeff and his team's speech at the conference that we can get into later as well. But one of the stories that he told me was this group of female sex workers that had worked in the sex industry. He didn't say exactly what they had done, but he just said that they worked in the sex industry and that they had been poorly treated by different bosses basically in that industry. And he went into the fact that a group of them had came in just randomly, and they said to him that the cathedral was the first place that they had ever felt safe and welcome, and that like basically nothing could make them feel unsafe, I guess. And so he said that now one of the things that they do is they still use the cathedral to meet, but they travel around the city trying to find different markers, which he explained as different places that they feel comfortable.
I think that's such a beautiful story, and is really truly at the heart and highlights what radical welcome is, and is a key point and a key message of this church. I think to round up, there's so much we could talk about in Jeff's speech. We could talk about Jeff's speech for hours. There were so many small things you could take apart and link to. But Jordan, in your opinion, what do you think this shows about the future of the church? Because the conference is about what we're going to do about the future and these topics and issues that society is facing, thus the church must face at the same time. And what do you think the church's end goal, if you can even say there is an end goal for the future?
So I wouldn't say that the church has an end goal. I remember talking to Jeff, and I think he said we never feel that we've completed our mission. Every day we wake up and we might strive to do more, but there's no destination that we're attempting to reach. We're just constantly trying to improve. So there isn't an end goal, but they are constantly getting better. And I would say they definitely do. The church, the cathedral, I mean, they still have a place in society. And that place is with this radical welcome message of, you know, everyone can come in here, and we want to teach people different things, but we also want to learn from you. And it's that community thing of how it's basically a symbiotic relationship of you teach us, we'll teach you, and we go back and forth. And we're not just, Jeff said at one point in his speech about, you know, the business sector and, you know, the civic leaders. These people aren't just our co-workers, they're also our friends, which is the correct way to foster a community. Is we're all in this mission together. And I think that is the message of this cathedral and of the church in general, and that the more and more people that look towards that, the stronger or the more likely they will be to see that the church doesn't have to be a place just for you if you're religious or if you have spirituality. It can be for anyone, because you can find a lot of different things in a church, even for those who aren't religious.
I think that has summarised it so beautifully, and I can't disagree. You feel so much warmth when you enter Newcastle Cathedral. They constantly have people welcoming you, making sure you feel welcome. They do so many different things for their community, and they're always striving for more. You can sense that as soon as you talk to any single one of the volunteers, and I'm so happy it's being held here. And Jeff set the scene so well. All speakers did today about what this conference is going to achieve by the end of it. And maybe there is no one complete end goal of this is how we solve racial injustice and this is how we solve climate change and social inequality. But you know, by the end of this, people will be striving for it even more than they did before. They'll have so much more ideas of how to go through with it, from discussing with each other, looking at how other cathedrals do what, and just really engaging with other members of their church. And I think that's a really great point to end on. I'm really excited for the rest of the week. I think Jordan is too. Are you excited too, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We've both looked at the programme and there seems to be a lot of good talks going on. There seems to be some interesting speakers that I'm looking forward to listening to.
Oh yeah, and hopefully we'll get an exclusive question asked for the podcast that you can all look forward to. But it's nearing 8:30 and we've been up for a long time at this point. But I'm really excited to bring you more episodes for the rest of the week and get into more deep discussions about racial injustice, climate injustice, and social injustice. Of course, we can't cover everything that was said today. And if you have anything you want to discuss, please leave it down in the comments to talk about or tweet it to us using the hashtag
NCC 2022.
Tag us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We just want to create as much discussion as possible and really get out the message out there of what the National Cathedrals Conference is trying to achieve this year. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to giving you another podcast tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.